light from the flickering candle cast long shadows across the dusty tomes that filled the dimly lit chamber. The air in the archives of Linden was thick with the smell of parchment, ancient and musty, untouched for centuries. Idriel sat hunched over a desk, the weight of history before him. His slender fingers traced the edges of a manuscript, its pages yellowed with time. His heart quickened as he read the words, for they spoke of something that had long been lost to the world, the sigil of the forgotten flame, a relic tied to the ancient blue wizards. The blue wizards, those mysterious figures who had traveled into the east at the bidding of the Valor, their task lost to legend, their fate unknown. What had become of them? What secrets had they taken with them into the far corners of Middle-earth? Idriel had spent years studying the lore of the elves, the ancient history of the world, and the stories of those who had vanished from the pages of time. But this manuscript was different. It spoke of the Blue Wizards' secret campaigns, their struggles against the remnants of Sauron's influence in the east, and the artifact they had left behind, the sigil of the forgotten flame. The words were cryptic, but clear in their implications. The sigil was a key that could either empower the forces that opposed Sauron's lingering shadow, or undo all that the Valor had strived to achieve. The power of the sigil was both immense and dangerous, tied to the fate of the East, a place where ancient darkness still stirred, hidden from the eyes of the free peoples. Idriel felt his breath catch as he read on. The sigil had been lost, its location unknown, but the manuscript hinted at clues scattered across the Far East, in the ruins of forgotten cities, and beneath the crumbling walls of ancient strongholds. If it still existed, the sigil could be found, and if found, its power would be impossible to ignore. A deep, unsettling desire stirred within Idriel. The knowledge, the truth about the Blue Wizard's secret struggle could be his, but at what cost? He paused, his fingers stilling on the page, as a cold shadow passed over his heart. He had always sought knowledge, but this was not mere history. This was power ancient, dangerous, and perhaps more than he could bear. With a slow breath, Idriel made up his mind. He had to find the sigil, not only to understand the Blue Wizard's true fate, but to restore balance to Middle-earth. If the sigil was lost, so too was a piece of Middle-earth's history, a piece that, if discovered, could alter the course of the future. The journey would be long, fraught with dangers both known and unknown. But he would go. He had no choice. As Idriel closed the manuscript, the weight of the decision settled heavily upon him. This was no simple quest. This was the beginning of a journey that would reveal not only the truth of the past, but also the potential of the future. The sun had not yet risen when Idriel set out from Linden, leaving behind the safety of his library and the comfort of knowledge. His path led him eastward through the wild lands of Eriador, remnants of old kingdoms lay scattered and forgotten, hidden beneath the soil like buried bones. His journey was a solitary one, though he knew that he would need allies in the coming days. He had barely crossed the borders of Eriador when he encountered him, Urindor, a rugged ranger of the north, whose presence was as silent as the land he called home. Urindor was a man hardened by the years, by conflict and loss. His eyes held the sharpness of one who had seen too much, who had lived too long in the shadows. Lost in thought elf, Urindor's voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. He appeared from the tree line, a tall figure clad in worn leather and fur, his face weathered by countless winters. Idriel looked up, startled by the sudden appearance of the man, but the unease in his heart quickly shifted to curiosity. I seek knowledge, Idriel replied, his voice steady despite the tension that crept into his thoughts. The truth of the blue wizards and the sigil of the forgotten flame. Urindor's eyes narrowed, and a flicker of recognition passed across his face. The blue wizards, he muttered, as if tasting the words. A forgotten tale, even to the people of Rune. Do you know of them? Idriel asked, his heart quickening at the prospect of finding an ally with first-hand knowledge. Urindor's gaze softened, though his tone remained firm. I have walked the borders of Rune, where their shadows still linger. I know their struggle, though the histories will not speak of it. You seek the sigil of the forgotten flame, do you? Idriel nodded. I must. It is said to be a key to the fate of Erebor, and perhaps even Middle-earth itself. Urindor's expression darkened. The East is a land of ruin, elf. The sigil you seek is no simple artifact. It holds the power to undo what was done long ago, or worse yet, to awaken what should remain buried. Then help me, Idriel said, his voice earnest. Help me find the sigil, and we can uncover the truth of the Blue Wizard's work. Their campaigns were not a failure, as the histories say. They fought against a darkness that still stirs in the east. Urindor hesitated, then sighed, his eyes casting toward the rising sun. I do not trust easy words, but you seek truth, and I seek the end of the shadow that lingers in the east. I will guide you, elf. But know this, what you seek may not be what you hope to find. Idriel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. In Urindor, he had found a reluctant ally, one who shared a common goal, even if their methods and motivations were not the same. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was one he must undertake, for in the secrets of the past lay the key to the future, and Altharion was determined to uncover them all. The road to Rune was treacherous, winding through dense forests and across wide, desolate plains. As they traveled, the sun rose and set in a slow, unchanging rhythm, marking the passage of days. Altharion's thoughts, however, were anything but peaceful. Every night he lay awake, thinking of the sigil, the power it promised, and the dangers it held. What would he find in the east? would the truth be worth the price? One night, as they camped beneath the stars, Erendor shared the first of many tales, stories of the Blue Wizards and their missions in the East. They had been sent by the Valor, tasked with weakening Sauron's influence over the East, but their missions had been shrouded in secrecy. Erendor spoke of rumors, of dark rituals and strange alliances, of battles fought in forgotten corners of Middle-earth. The Blue Wizards had waged their secret war, but the price had been high, and in the end, they had disappeared from history, their legacy buried beneath the weight of time. We were all forgotten in the East, Erendor said softly, staring into the fire, and the darkness we fought. It never truly left. Idriel listened, his heart heavy with the weight of the unknown. The more he learned, the more he understood that the sigil of the Forgotten Flame was not just an artifact of power. It was a key to something much greater, something that could either save Middle-earth or plunge it back into the shadow. The next morning, as they packed their things and prepared to continue their journey, Idriel made a vow to himself. He would uncover the truth of the Blue Wizards, no matter what it cost, and he would learn the true power of the sigil, for better or worse. The fate of Middle-earth might depend on it. The night was cold and heavy with the scent of ancient earth. The moon hung low over the landscape of Rune, casting long shadows across the ruins of a forgotten city. Altharion could feel the weight of the past pressing in on him, a reminder that their quest was not just about the Golden Heart, but about uncovering long-buried truths that would either heal or damn Middle-earth. As they camped beneath the remnants of what had once been a great hall, Altharion could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. His dreams had been restless since their arrival, dreams filled with whispers in a language he could not understand, voices that spoke of ancient powers and forces long forgotten. But one dream in particular had left him shaken. It was not just a vision, it felt like a presence, something ancient and bound to the land. The figure in his dream had no face, only a glowing silhouette, and it had spoken his name. Altharion, the voice echoed in his mind even now. You are treading a dangerous path. The sigil is not what you think it is. He had awoken with a start, drenched in cold sweat, the words still ringing in his ears. As the campfire crackled in the silence of the night, Altharion could not shake the sense that something was stirring deep within him, something connected to the sigil and the power it promised. What troubles you, Altharion? Luthiel's voice broke through his thoughts. Her figure stood silhouetted against the firelight, her eyes watching him carefully, though her expression remained unreadable. Altharion hesitated, his fingers tightening around the worn edges of the manuscript he had found in Lindon. He had shared little of his dreams with the others. How could he? They would never understand. They were so focused on the sigil and its potential to restore Erebor that they could not see the darkness that seemed to be closing in on them all. Altharion began, his voice betraying his unease. I am not sure this is what I thought it was. Luthiel stepped closer, her brow furrowing with concern. What do you mean? The sigil, he whispered, as though speaking its name might bring about its power. It is more than just an artifact, Luthiel. I felt it, its presence, its pull. But I think it is not only linked to the past. It may have a will of its own. Luthiel's eyes softened with understanding. She, too, had heard the stories of the Blue Wizards, though her own history with them was clouded with both admiration and betrayal. She had her own doubts about the wisdom of their quest, but she had never spoken them aloud. Until now. You feel its weight, she said quietly. I can see it in your eyes. It's not just knowledge you seek, is it, Altharion? Its power. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly looked away, as though ashamed. I seek the truth, he whispered, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. But what if the truth comes at too great a cost? Before she could respond, Erendor's voice cut through the night, gruff and abrupt, as always. You'd better get some rest. Tomorrow we move deeper into the east. If the sigil, as important as you think, will need all our strength. Erendor had been quiet throughout their journey. His face hardened with a world weariness that Altharion had not yet begun to understand. Erendor had seen the horrors of the East firsthand. He had fought beside the Blue Wizards, but even he had never fully understood their campaign or their fall. Now it seemed that ignorance was beginning to cost them all. Altharion nodded, but sleep would not come easily. When the night grew still and the firelight flickered against the ancient stone, Altharion closed his eyes. And there, in the dark recesses of his mind, the Watcher returned. It was not a face he saw, but a presence, an ancient being bound to the sigil, its form ethereal and shifting, like smoke in the wind. The Watcher spoke again, its voice like the rustle of leaves in an autumn forest, familiar and yet distant. Altharion, the Watcher's voice echoed, deep and resonant. You must leave the sigil behind. Its power is not a gift, it is a curse. You seek knowledge, but at what cost? Altharion's breath caught in his throat, his heart pounding in his chest. The warning struck deep, like a blade driven into his soul. The sigil binds not only those who seek it, the Watcher continued, its voice growing more insistent. It binds all of Middle-earth to the darkness of its past. You will not find the answers you seek. You will only find ruin. Altharion's mind raced. What was the Watcher? Why did it speak to him? He knew little of the Blue Wizards and their secret campaigns, but he had always believed they were forces of good, sent by the valor to combat the darkness. Now, as the Watcher's warning weighed heavily on him, he began to doubt everything he had once believed. Leave it, Altharion. Leave the sigil before it consumes you, as it consumed those before you. Suddenly, the dream shifted, and Altharion was standing in the heart of an ancient battlefield, a place where the Blue Wizards had fought their final battle against the remnants of Sauron's forces. The land was scorched, the air thick with the acrid smell of death. The spirits of the fallen lay all around him, their faces twisted in anguish. The sigil was there, gleaming in the distance, but it was not the bright, shining artifact he had imagined. It was dark, corrupted, its light twisted and unnatural. As he moved closer to it, a sense of dread overwhelmed him, and his mind filled with visions of what the sigil had done, what it had caused. Altharion awoke with a gasp, his body drenched in sweat. The dream was gone, but the feeling remained, like a shadow that clung to his soul. Altharion, Luthiel's voice broke through the haze of his thoughts. He looked up to see her standing beside him, her expression unreadable. The East is not kind to those who seek what should remain hidden. You must be careful. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he saw something that mirrored his own fears. They had both been seduced by the promise of knowledge, but the cost was becoming too clear. We will leave the sigil behind, won't we? Luthiel's voice was steady, but laced with uncertainty. We are not prepared for the consequences of wielding that power. Idriel stood, his decision weighing heavily on his heart. We must know the truth, Luthiel. The Blue Wizards, their fight, it wasn't in vain. We owe it to them to uncover the truth. But even as he spoke, he felt the weight of the Watcher's warning gnawing at him. His desire to learn, to discover the lost truths of Middle-earth, had led him into the dark, unknown. And now, it seemed, the darkness was closing in. As they made their way toward the unknown lands, Altharion could not shake the feeling that the choices ahead would define not only his fate, but the fate of all who walked the lands of Middle-earth. The sigil of the Forgotten Flame would either be their salvation or their undoing. And somewhere in the shadows of the east, Thalion's forces were closing in. The air in the archives of Linden felt heavy with the weight of ancient knowledge as Altharion sat hunched over a scroll, the candlelight casting flickering shadows on the walls around him. His slender fingers moved with reverence over the yellowed parchment, his eyes scanning the words that seemed to pull at the very core of his being. This was no ordinary manuscript. This was a relic, a whisper of something long buried in the depths of Middle-earth's history. The scroll spoke of the Blue Wizards, those enigmatic figures who had left Middle-earth's shores at the command of the Valor to battle the dark forces in the east, their fate unknown, their deeds lost to time. The manuscript recounted their final, secret campaign, a struggle against the lingering power of Sauron, a power that still festered in the shadows of the east. And at the heart of this campaign was an artifact, the sigil of the Forgotten Flame. The sigil was not just a symbol. It was a key to an ancient power that could either end Sauron's influence once, and for all or unleash a darkness greater than any that had come before. Altharion's heart beat faster as he read. mind raced with questions. How had this artifact been lost? What had happened to the blue wizards? And, most pressing of all, why had this knowledge been hidden for so long? He leaned closer, his eyes narrowing in on the cryptic passages that seemed to offer more questions than answers. The sigil was said to be hidden deep within the east, in lands where the blue wizards had fought their greatest battles. But the manuscript warned of its power, the temptation it held, the danger it posed. Its influence could corrupt even the purest heart, the text suggested, and Altharian's mind reeled with the implications of that warning. The more he read, the more the lure of the sigil gripped him. Was this knowledge, this relic, worth the risk? He closed the manuscript with a soft sigh, the weight of his decision pressing upon him. He could not ignore it. The sigil held the answers to so many questions about the blue wizards, about the east, about the dark forces that still simmered beneath the surface of Middle-earth. And so, Altharian made a choice. He would find the sigil. He stood, his resolve firming within him. The sigil was not just a piece of history, it was a key to the future, and perhaps the only way to truly rid Middle-earth of the remnants of Sauron's shadow. He could not ignore the call, but as he gathered his belongings and prepared for the journey, a lingering doubt gnawed at him. What would he find in the east? And, more importantly, what would the sigil do to him once he found it? The journey to the east was not one Altharian had planned lightly. The road ahead was fraught with danger, filled with perils both natural and supernatural. But he was not alone. Erendor, the Ranger of Rune, had agreed to join him. The grim man had lived through many battles, and his knowledge of the lands Altharian was venturing into would prove invaluable. The two of them traveled through the wilds of Eriador, the landscape changing with every step. The once familiar hills of Linden gave way to dense forests and barren plains, and the further east they went, the more unsettled Altharian felt. The air seemed thick with history, as though the land itself remembered the struggles that had shaped it. At night, the winds whispered strange sounds through the trees, and Altharian often felt as though unseen eyes were watching him, observing his every step. Their journey was slow, and Erendor's silence was a constant companion. The ranger was a man of few words, but when he did speak, his voice was gravelly, his words heavy with meaning. They had passed through the lands of Rune, where the blue wizards had once fought, and Altharian had begun to see the first signs of what they had left behind: ruins, forgotten cities, and strange markings that hinted at the remnants of their secret work. "You've seen these markings before," Altharian said one evening as they sat by their campfire, staring into the darkened forest beyond. Erendor nodded, his face hard and unreadable. "I've seen them in the far east, where the blue wizards once waged their war. They're symbols, but not of hope. These are the signs of a struggle against something ancient, something dark. Altharion frowned, turning the symbol in his mind. Then why have they been hidden? Why is all of this buried in such secrecy? Secrecy's the only thing that's kept Middle-earth from falling into the abyss, Erendor said, his tone sharp. The Blue Wizard's mission was one of shadow, not of light. What they did, what they uncovered, it was dangerous, and they paid the price for it. Altharion's mind whirled. He had always believed the Blue Wizards were sent to stop Sauron, to fight for the light. But the further he delved into their history, the more he realized that their story was far more complex and far darker than he had ever imagined. That night, Altharion lay awake, his thoughts consumed by the sigil and the warnings of the manuscript. He had set out to uncover the past, but now, with every step he took, he felt the weight of the future pressing down on him. The journey took them deeper into the east, and the days began to blur together. Altharion felt the weight of the task before him, but it was more than just the physical toll of travel. It was as if the very land was changing him, pulling him closer to the sigil, as though it were drawing him toward a fate he could not escape. And then, as they neared the ruins of an ancient city that had once stood at the heart of the Blue Wizard's campaign, Altharion began to experience something else. Dreams. Strange, vivid dreams that felt more like memories than mere figments of his imagination. He saw the Blue Wizards standing in the ruins of the east, their faces twisted with sorrow and regret. He saw the sigil, glowing with an otherworldly light, surrounded by shadowy figures, and he heard a voice, soft but insistent, speaking his name. Altharion, the voice echoed through his mind, a familiar but unplaceable sound. Do not seek the sigil. The power it offers is not worth the price. He awoke with a start, his heart racing. The dreams were growing more vivid, more insistent. What did they mean? Who was speaking to him? And why was the sigil calling to him so powerfully? It was during their exploration of the ruins that Altharion's worst fears began to take shape. The once great city of the Blue Wizards had fallen into ruin, its walls cracked and broken, its towers